Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip.
Episode 351. What does it mean to become AI native? According to Milin Desai, the CEO at Sentry, it's less about making sure we use every AI tool out there on the market and more about leveraging the practical aspects of those tools that can add value to our day and make us more relevant in the overall industry. Before we share part 3 of Milin's story today, let's recap what's happened so far. In part 1 of our discussion with Milin in episode 349, we talked about the experience that led to his first tech job at Veritas and why Milin decided to move into a technical marketing role at Riverbed. In part 2 of our discussion in episode 350, we talked a lot about contextual communication, why it's important, and some of the mechanics of using it. We discussed how Milin evaluates new opportunities and got to hear a little bit about his experience as a leader. This week in part 3 of our discussion, you'll get to hear the story of Milin's progression from being the general manager of a business unit all the way up to CEO. We'll certainly talk about how to become AI native, but also how that translates into becoming AI native as an entire organization. And then Milin gives us some great tips on contextual communication to your leadership. Let's get you to part 3 and the conclusion of our series of discussions with Milin Desai.
One of the things maybe I wanted to ask is getting to that general manager level, all of a sudden you own a P&L statement. How is that different from the things that you've gone through before? Nothing necessarily prepares you for that unless you've been, preparing yourself.
The latter is super important in this, which is you have to prepare yourself. And fortunately, in my growth phase, I was always involved because I was on the product side. There was a very clear understanding of we're going to invest in this new area. It's going to need X number of resources. Where are those resources going to come from? Are we going to move them? Every year we had to do a projection of how much revenue we're going to bring in. So I would say I had a pretty good handle on some of these elements. Where all of this gets really interesting is when you have to do P&L in a constrained environment. And this, I think, not a lot of organizations do. It's almost like the equivalent of stress testing a bank, right? When you do annual planning and growth and everything else, you send out all these people to go tell me what you need, and they'll all come back and say, I need 100 more people and da-da-da-da. Very rarely do people come back and say, I've got the same org, I'm going to reshape the org, move things around, and I'm going to do these new things with the same number of people. I think most leaders are not very good with that philosophy. In that role, the thing I learned was, what if I did not have anything? How would I constrain myself? Stress testing and saying, if we had to adapt and we don't have anything more coming in, how would we adapt as a team? So we stayed lean, we stayed hungry as a group, we had the ability to move things around. And so that's where I kind of learned the adaptability of an organization in that. But that part is still probably the hardest thing to do, which people call it, I think, zero new growth dollars and show me a plan with that. The problem is people put plans and then they know that wink, wink, no, this plan is not going to be the plan. So they kind of cheat their way through it, right? But I really think every organization should do that. And then you always have the ability to go add more people and, spruce things up. But structurally say, is this how we still want to operate? And we rarely do that because we are all kind of, oh, this person has this part and it will make them uncomfortable or whatever it is. So I knew the numbers, the resourcing and everything else. We did a lot of planning. But what I learned I needed to get better at is this constrained planning, I call it. I still feel like that was a lot of fun to do and work under those things. Even though I did have, like, eventually they did give me resources, I kind of loved working as a general manager saying, how do we maximize if we didn't get everything that we wanted? So that means we had to move things around. What is the hardest thing to do? To say no. What is the hardest thing for a product manager to do? Shut down a feature. What is the hardest thing for a VP of engineering to do? To shut down a product.
Or a hiring manager that has to get rid of an employee that they loved but isn't the right fit anymore.
Correct. Between the last few years of head of, just running product and then GM, I think that was kind of the most relevant exercise of learning that I had. Or I made that a learning, if that makes sense. I continue to kind of operate in that way, and I'm lucky enough to have a leadership team that thinks along those lines. We are unconstrained, but we try to kind of make sure, let's put some artificial constraints and see what we would do different.
My follow-on question is the contrast between that experience and then actually being the CEO of the organization, right? Not just the GM of a business unit, but the CEO of the entire organization.
I remember when I got the opportunity and I was in conversations, a couple of folks, John Martin, who's the CPO of Netscope right now, he's my old boss at Riverbed. I was chatting with him and he's like, are you sure, Milin, you want to do this? It's not a capability question. It was, do you understand what you're signing up for? It is very different. You are responsible for everything. There is no other person. There is no other excuse. There is no other system that I can blame. Something goes wrong at Sentry, I am it. And I have to go to sleep every day thinking about it. I wake up every day thinking about it. You have to really know you want to do this. A lot of people think they want to do it till they get there, and it's hard. I kind of knew it. I love it. It's hard, but it's been great with this team that we have. The founder, Kramer, Chris Jennings, they're still here. Todd, my partner in crime, and now Dave Rosenthal, Virginia. All these people are, driving this. Rahul. So I think it has alleviated it, but the single stark difference in all of this is you're it. And as John said, are you sure you want to do it? Do you understand the gravity? I spoke to my wife about it in terms of like, this is it's a very different intensity. The buck stops at you from everything and anything. And there are some problems which I've faced. 3 months into this job, COVID showed up. I had never even imagined that as part of my decision-making tree. And to work through that and adapt through it. And even 2 years now, we're still all figuring it out in a way. So it's been a fun ride, but I would say it's very different to be a GM versus being a CEO. You're using your same skills, but it's a completely different magnitude of responsibility and impact in that. Let me give you a simple example. As a GM, I could change the trajectory of my P&L, maybe affect the company a little bit. In that I have influence. As a CEO, I slow down, the company slows down. I make a big strategic mistake, we could lose massively. As a GM, I own a piece of the pie. And so, there's just all these kind of elements in there. It doesn't scare me. It almost gets me more excited. It's kind of weird. Like maybe I'm a sucker for this stuff, but I love it. But it's to your point, everything depends on you. So you can't do this in fear either, right? So having the right partners, taking all the lessons from before and applying that helps. And I've learned through this journey quite a bit about where I could be better and sharper and other things, right? So I'm pretty aggressive, and I would say I could even be more aggressive in my current role.
There's something that I've been wondering I've been applying to my own career. Maybe you can comment on this. Like I've lived through a couple different massive technology waves, virtualization of infrastructure, the move to cloud. There's been this mobile revolution, and now we're kind of facing down this generative AI. And I think there's a lot of us who get a lot of value out of it, but a lot of people seem like really unconvinced. They have these thought-terminating cliches. Oh, it's going to be like Skynet. And then they stop thinking. How do you talk to people like that? Or I guess, move forward in the marketplace when you know that there are those influences out there?
I'm very practical with technology. Almost all my conversations are very more ground floor, starts from the ground floor and moves up. The unconstrained view of what AI could do, we have seen it in movies already. So I think like the unconstrained aspect of this is what we can imagine, or maybe even worse, right? And so you can almost think about that and worry and not participate and be on the other side if that happens or whatever it is, or just practically on a day-to-day basis, figure out what aspects you want to opt in. So I'm more in that camp. So I'll give you one simple example. Right? When these voice assistants came along, I don't have one of those in my. I didn't find them useful. I don't, do this for me, whatever. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like on the AI front, just think about how it could practically help you on a day-to-day basis versus trying to worry too much about all the aspects, some of which you absolutely don't even control. So you could say, by paying my $20 subscription, I'm helping that bigger cause. Well, that bigger cause is going to happen irrespective. So you got to figure out how you practically use this, how to become an active voice in it and move the path forward. So that's kind of how that's my advice to people. My wife's just started using ChatGPT and she's absolutely in love with it. She's like, so many of my tedious kind of research things have become super fast. This is again a value question. I said, so will you pay $20 for it? She's on the free tier. And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, you just said it saves you so much more time versus like doing 3 Google searches as an example. When I said that, she's like, yeah. So I think it will bring productivity in ways that we don't even know. Who wouldn't want a robot at home, especially in the Western world, that could potentially do your laundry for you?
That's funny. I was just thinking fold my laundry as my biggest pain point.
It frees up 1 to 2 hours of time, and that could be a time a set of parents could be spending with their little newborn. Or instead of doing that work, you're out getting sunlight or hanging out with friends having beer. I think there are some unimaginable value points that are going to come into play with robotics and AI. I feel is going to be amazing. There is going to be this opportunity of productivity around some of the daily tasks we do, which I get pretty excited about. Like I was just giving you the example of research and search and everything else. So I think just be practical in how you're using it, how it will bring value to your life. And the ones that you don't find value of, don't do it. I don't try every AI tool. I don't have 7 things in there, but the things I care about, I lean in. And so don't worry about the unconstrained. You don't control it anyways. Be a positive participant in this. And through that, maybe find people who are afraid of these things that are supposed to happen and be part of those communities and helping fix those things. There's conversations around that. But that's how I would do it. So when it comes to AI, is there a bubble? Is there not a bubble? Who knows? That will play out in time. But there is actual transformation happening. Use cases that are taking place in vertical industries, right? Not just us searching for a vacation in that regard. It's medical transcribing. It's some of the things we've talked about. I think the intersection of AI and robotics is it's going to be an exceptional thing in itself. But yeah, that's kind of how I would lay this out. I would lean into it. I would not shy away from it, and really figure out like our place in all of this, which is probably the harder question in there. I fundamentally believe you will still need engineers. You'll still need all of these things, but certain functions are getting automated, and so you're going to have to figure out where is the new value being created and how do you participate in the new value system in that. Just keep that in mind. And it comes back to where we started this conversation around like curiosity, asking and looking, and signals open, listen, where are things moving, apply the same principles to this field that is in front of us. It's super exciting. And every company is willing to let you explore and learn. Like if you're at Sentry, we'll be like, use whatever tools you want, go figure it out, become AI native. When do you last remember an organization or a set of organizations saying, go spend another $1,000, $2,000 a year and work on hobby projects and figure it out and bring that talent back into the company? Like it's amazing. So leverage that, lean into it, don't shy away from it.
What I wonder about is the junior technology personnel, right? We can give AI tools to someone who's senior and they didn't develop their expertise with that tool in existence. So if I am a junior level person, I can use the AI to help me fill that gap, but how do I develop that same expertise to get up to where the senior person is?
Just with everything, it's the number of at-bats you get. You could read as much books about running a company and work with the top leaders, and till you don't run a company or be through, the digging through the dirt, through the moments of euphoria, you wouldn't know, right? So I think the way to think about this is, for some of the senior folks, it's an accelerant in terms of taking some of the tedious tasks away. For some of the younger folks in their career, you become AI native, you use agents to code all day. Where I would spend my time is thinking through failure modes of when something fails, how will we handle things? So those fundamental things keep coming back, right? Like, if something breaks, will I be able to debug it? What are the failure modes for a user that's accessing the system? At what point in time will we have to look at scale aspects of the system, both just scaling versus architecturally? And then you start asking those questions and putting those pieces as learning building blocks while you are using, you're young, you're using AI and everything else. And you're like, let's break it and see if I can debug that thing I just shipped. I think you have to think again at first level principles, system level thinking. Can I debug it? When will we have to scale it? Will it require architectural stuff? The user experience, is it intact? If I leave, will somebody else be able to understand this? So is there good design documentation written it? AI could write it, but structurally. So I think you start building these first principles of building systems. Again, starts with writing, starts with deep thinking, starts with thinking from the user in its various phases, thinking about failure modes, scaling modes, everything else. And so you build those habits even as a young engineer. And so when you get to a point, you start asking the right question, and AI or no AI, you're going to be successful and valued because you're thinking in first principles. So you have to develop that, but you can develop that with AI and with the folks around you.
Maybe you can and maybe you can't answer this question, but with your view on AI as not, pure hype, can you maybe speak to how organizations like Sentry might be reorganizing their priorities internally as far as how products get developed, how products get tested, how products get shipped, that feedback cycle from customers, that kind of thing?
I think for us, because of that large scale of our install base, so just for context, Sentry, pretty much from the hottest startup to the largest organization uses Sentry. So we're like over 150,000 software orgs, teams use us. So it's massive scale. And the feedback is constant. So we are like a very iterative, fast feedback loop. I'll give you the kind of simplest way we've thought about it. We've basically told the entire company, you must become AI native. We've not put kind of like weird parameters of do X or do Y. I think what we've done is go use the tooling that you need initially to become AI native, and then we'll put the constraints from a corporate standpoint saying this is not good or that is not good, right? Like, so because somebody may love Cursor and somebody else is working in IntelliJ and they might have some other thing, you know what I mean? So we don't want to kind of everything from IDE choices constrain what you can use. If you're a developer or if you're in legal, you may have other constraints that you're thinking through in terms of how you use AI. So I think the number one thing we did was we unconstrained everyone to say, go figure out how to become AI native. Because whether you're at Sentry or otherwise, this is a skill you're going to need. So participate in it, right? So that's number one. Number two is we have a set of folks building kind of AI specific capabilities. But what we said is you cannot have a central team. There is no like AI team. Let me explain what I mean by that. There is a set of people who are experts at fine-tuning AI, the models and how everything works. But if you want to be the company of the future, then it's not a AI team. It's everything in terms of what you're building has a perspective of participating in an AI native world. It cannot be that there's like 30% of the team that is, working on AI stuff and the others are not, right? So the opportunity for something like Sentry, we said, is about how do we make all the things Sentry brings value. Luckily, AI is a tailwind for us, and make it AI native, right? Like bring it in. So one of the other things we ended up doing was asking some of our smaller, newer product teams to go figure out how they would embed capabilities of AI into our product. We had actually a couple of new grads who went and built like session replay summarization, their ideas. They went from 0 to 1. That was another kind of interesting initiative. We did Hack Week and it was AI themed, and that created a whole set of new energy in that. And so where are we right now? We basically, are like, what does it mean for Sentry to exploit all the opportunity it is in software? And so it's not constrained to a team, it's organization wide. There'll always be a team that is kind of like building some of the core elements, AI infrastructure and other things that we need. But pretty much across the board, every team is going to look at what they do and say, is there a version that brings the experience forward because we now have LLMs and AI and all this new tech? That's the question you have to answer. Now, the answer may be no. So we're asking that question, and individual teams are now making that decision. Should we do it? Should we not do it? How should it show up? Where does it present? Is it on the front end? Is it on the back end? Is it invisible to the user? And all of those things that are taking place. But we are making that shift. We have made that shift. But you saw it came in phases. We are kind of all moving in that direction, but we brought it into the organization in a very kind of natural way, almost in a democratized way, with a little bit of guidance. And now everybody's kind of thinking in that way. And this all happened, by the way, in a period of 3 to 4 months. So it's not like some long journey I'm talking about here, right? But you have to bring people along for the ride versus kind of, here's what you're going to do. That doesn't work.
Yes, no, that makes absolute sense to me. So allow people to use the tools, explore the tools, put some governance around it, some rules saying like, hey, you can't put customer confidential data into a query that, maybe somebody's going to train on. So yeah, that absolutely makes sense to me, especially if you want to modernize an organization, or I guess it's not even modernize, it's just, keep up to par, maybe get a little bit ahead.
It's to stay relevant. That's why I made the statement, with or without Sentry, every employee has to become AI native. So become AI native, bring ideas to the table, push the envelope on that. What we did was we let folks opt into kind of new areas of the product, and now everybody's opting in. It was not like a big button one day. Everybody's just naturally kind of just moving in this direction. Part of it is also because we wanted to finish up all the commitments that we had, which was still relevant for us. Remember, for us, it's a tailwind, so we didn't have to go do unnatural things. If you're in a team or a product line or something where this comes and whacks you in the head, then you do need to pause and say, let's reset, right? Luckily, we had a little bit of a window to kind of make that soft transition, and that's already happened, and it's 2 or 3 months, but it's all full motion right now.
Like if you think about like the adoption lifecycle, there's maybe bleeding edge use cases where only the innovators are doing. And there's maybe things that are only slightly more mature where you're only seeing innovators and early adopters, but you can actually be the late majority to some of the things that are going on. Like one of my pet peeves is when somebody forwards me a long email thread and says FYI, and that's the only thing that they type. But somebody did that to me recently, and in my email client, it summarized the whole thread in a way that was super helpful for me. That's a late majority feature.
Yes.
That I can absolutely adopt and say, oh, that's fine. And I'm not opting into Armageddon from Skynet, right?
It's so funny. As we talked about this journey, in Sentry, what we do is we group what we believe are similar errors or things that are broken into this thing called an issue. And we added AI grouping to it, which resulted in 40% reduction, improvement in the grouping. So lesser issues, sharper. And the funny enough thing is we shipped it to all our customers. And it was a free feature, a high value thing, to your point. And most would not even know that it's AI grouping, right? Now, that was kind of like, think about it, like everybody talks about AI products. Our first thing we brought to life was something that improved core Sentry in its inherent being, right? Developed by that, our team that I said, the central team that was looking at AI first, and shipped it. There's so many parts of this journey that like you can work through, and yours was a perfect example of like, can you just synthesize this for me? Like, especially, I don't know about you folks, but our concentration spans are getting smaller and smaller. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but this kind of stuff will help with that, right? So that's a late stage, but it works.
I want to go down that path you just said about concentration getting smaller and smaller. You talked about contextual communication earlier, the importance of it from the top lens, management down. We talked about it a little bit with working with AI. We need to be contextual communicators working with AI. What I have found is that the individual contributor has a very strong challenge when trying to be a contextual communicator upward to their manager and perhaps to someone like yourself, a CEO of an organization. So what are your suggestions for those individual contributors to be better at contextual communication upward, because they're going to be working with people who are very busy and we all have shortened attention spans?
The simplest starting point is to think about it. Let me kind of what I mean by that. A lot of us will not even think about, what if I ran into this person and if they asked me something, what will I do? You can't think of every scenario, but what tends to happen is you run into somebody who is maybe 1 or 2 levels of ownership higher than you. They ask you a question. You are deep in the weeds of solving a problem. And so you're so lost in that problem that when you speak to that person, you may miss an opportunity to talk about why you're solving that problem. So I think at a very simplistic level, the way you can solve this is always remember and always ask early on in your career, why are we doing this? How does this help? Who does it help? Just knowing that and starting to believe in that is helpful. A number of times I meet engineers at Sentry and otherwise where I've gone to them and like, we're working on this project, we're 30% in, and I'm like, what do you guys think? And suddenly in my one-on-ones, they're like, this thing we're building, it's not going to be useful. I'm like, then why are we building it? Why are you not speaking up? You know what I mean? Just understanding why you're doing something, who does it help? Now what happens is, if you know the why you're building it or who does it help, if somebody asks you, how's it going? And at some point it comes to the project and you're like, we're working on this and we are halfway down it. And then they're like, tell me what's broken. Or because what is the job of somebody 2 levels up? They're just asking the right questions. What do you think? Is it going to solve the problem? So now again, you know the fundamentals, and so you can answer questions. So just be prepared on like why you're doing something, how is it going, have a point of view on it. Sometimes you can say, I'm one of those people who kind of disagree with this project, but I'm aligned because I'm part of this team. So I would say that single-handed thing is going to help you in what I'm calling asynchronous communication, where somebody just taps your shoulder and shows up and you're like, oh, what do I do? You just always ask this question, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? And then as a result, you'll know the value, you'll know the persona, and how does it fit in, right? So those questions then contextualize everything. Doesn't matter level 1 or level N at that point in time.
I love how you just gave me several episode titles in that answer. Love it. Thank you, Milin. I really appreciate that perspective.
We both really appreciate your time. We're just about time to wrap up. Is there anything that you can tell us maybe that we missed, that we forgot to ask?
I think we covered so much. Hopefully, people will parse through value through all my verbosity. But hopefully the stories and anecdotes make the dot connecting sense. And I think just come back to first principles of all the things we talked about. Be insanely curious, be insanely active, participate, and then everything kind of flows from there. I just want to end with this super important point is, at the end of the day, we're only as good as the people around us. And whether you're a manager listening, you're an IC, we're all going to screw up. But remember, it's about the humans. And like in every aspect of my life, I can tell you the individuals who've helped me. I've rattled off so many names. I've probably missed so many. So I apologize if I missed your name, but you know who you are. It matters. But those people can only help you if you want to be helped. So you need to take charge and ask and drive the conversation. And there will be a point where you may not be satisfied. We all are impatient. We all want to reach the summit on the very next day. Sometimes it takes time. So you have to understand what level of patience you have, but you own your path, your narrative, your direction, and you need to make sure that you get the most of an organization. I think people tend to forget that. Organizations sometimes get busy. I'm not making excuses for people like me and others, but what I'm trying to get at is I didn't get here just by waiting for people to give me what I believe was mine or I deserved, right? I actively participated in that conversation. Of course, I had great mentors who then helped me with it. It did not come right away. I had to wait, be patient. But I'll tell you, for the most part, if you work hard, you are an active contributor, you're curious, you have good people you're working for, things come along. And that formula is going to work. I'd probably say that that's my last take on this, which is don't assume that, magically the organization is going to do wonders. Be active. I'm a living proof of this. And then things will kind of ride for you.
Awesome. Milin, thank you so much for your time. I don't know if we can get a better mic drop moment than that, but that was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on Nerd Journey podcast.
It was a pleasure.
So if you listen closely, opting in is something you do on purpose. It's a conscious decision. You intend to do it. You take an action. We can use AI tools and we can take those things that are valuable. We're opting in, number one, to using those tools. It's a conscious decision to use it, get educated about how to use it, tinker around with it, and then yet another conscious decision to take those things that are valuable and use them in our toolbox, at work, in our personal lives, however that might help us. But even at a higher level, we are opting in to remaining more relevant in our industry and, as a byproduct, staying on top of some of those technology waves or technology trends. So it's going to help you, even if you don't use it for everything. And we're not saying you have to use it for everything, neither is Milin. If we think about Milin's decision to take on the role of CEO, he opted into that. He tried as much as he could to understand the gravity and the different intensity that role would bring. And he certainly understands the ownership level in that role now, and he really enjoys what he's doing. But he had to opt in to doing that. And he also, within his organization, has enabled other people to opt in by shifting the focus of the organization. So that's another layer of opting in. I think it's really important to think about that contextual communication upward to your manager, to your manager's manager, or perhaps even leaders above that. Remembering those 3 questions Milin asked us. Why are we doing this? How will it help? And who will it help? Because he is right. You're so in the weeds. You're just trying to solve a problem. You're just trying to fix this thing. You forget that you might need to zoom out because there are other people in your organization who need to understand it from that different lens so that they know what you're doing is solving the right problem. And if it's not, maybe you need to give them the feedback that it isn't. As we bring this episode to a close, I wanted to take a second to make a special announcement about our show and what you can expect moving forward. We've been a weekly release since July 2018. That's over 7 years. But unfortunately, life circumstances have dictated that we need to move our release cadence to once every 2 weeks. So when you don't see a show release on Tuesday, November 4th, I know you'll be sad, and so will I. But it doesn't mean the show's going away. It just means that we have to release it every 2 weeks now to make it sustainable, to make it something that will be at the quality standards we want, to fit within the lives and the schedules we have. So I hope you can understand that. I'll give you another reminder at the beginning of the next episode that the release cadence, at least for the time being, will be every 2 weeks. So until next time, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at BJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.